Every morning we tend to do a lot of things that we tend to take for granted. We get ready for school, we get ready for work. We jump in airplanes, ride buses, take taxi cabs, jump on trains, jump in our vehicles and hit the highway to go to work, to go to school. Things that we normally take for granted a lot of times. We're oblivious to the facts of things that are going on. We don't think about that somebody or something or someone could come along and totally disrupt the normal routine that takes place in our country. But that was exactly what happened 18 years ago yesterday. At exactly 8:46 p.m. In fact, the exact time was 8:46 and 40 seconds. That was the exact time that the first plane hit the North Tower of the World Trade Center. People that were on that plane were thinking they were just going to their normal destinations, oblivious that there were people that had a different plan that day. Not even 20 minutes later, the South Tower was hit with a plane as well. Before the day ended, we would end up with not only one disaster, but four different disasters in three different locations. And at the end of the day, nearly 3,000 people lost their lives. It was a day that is hard to think about and even harder to forget. But there was one day that was more important than even that day, and it's called the day after. Because September the 12th, 2001, millions of Americans gathered in churches, in synagogues, in mosques. They gathered at their workplaces, in front of school flagpoles, in parks. They held hands. They prayed. They shed tears. They hugged each other. At that moment in time, it didn't matter what you were. It didn't matter. Black black people, white people, Hispanic people, Asian people, mixed race people, Christian, Muslim, atheist, Jewish, Taoist, Buddhist, young, old, gay, lesbian, straight, bisexual, transgender, rich, poor, upper class, middle class, low class. From the lowliest Dick Jigger to the most wealthiest man on the planet Earth, everyone held hands and embraced, prayed, cried, shed tears, sang Amazing Grace, prayed for God's intervention and strength to bring comfort and peace to this time. Labels at that moment didn't matter because we were all Americans. And what happened to one happened to us all. Sadly, as sad as that event was, it took sadly to say that a tragedy like this brought the entire country together. And at that moment in time, labels didn't matter. As horrifying as this event was, and it was probably the most horrifying event of our time, 9/11 was our generation's Pearl Harbor, for those who remember Pearl Harbor. Those are people who were born at that time, know how horrible Pearl Harbor was. 9/11 was the equivalent of that to us, to our generation. But at that time, just as it then, everybody came together for one common cause, to defend the cause of liberty, to defend the rights and to protect the liberties that our Constitution provides. At that moment in time, if 9/11 was a traumatic event and an event to never forget, and it was that, and it is that, I believe that the morning after 9/11 was just as much an unforgettable event as 9/11, because on that day, America truly came together as one nation under God. And hopefully, my prayer is that it won't take another tragedy like this to bring us together, to help us remember that it doesn't matter what color or creed or race or background you come from. It doesn't matter what family you were born into or whether you were born to a family at all. What matters is that we are all Americans, and that as Americans we protect one another, and as Americans we care for one another. And in a world today where there are threats outside and threats within, the need for unity and love is the one thing that can bring us all together. And hopefully that it won't take tragedies like 9/11 or El Paso or Gilroy or Pulse nightclub in Orlando or the Sandy Hook shooting or the Virginia Tech shooting or the shooting in Aurora or the shooting in Sutherland Springs. Hopefully it won't take tragedies like this for us to realize that at the end of the day, labels don't matter. And that the most important lesson to learn is a simple one. If you love someone, no matter who they are, you need to let them know. Because nobody's guaranteed another day to say it. Flowers are for the living, ladies and gentlemen, not for the dead. Once they're in that cold coffin, it's too late to show love. It's too late to shed tears. It's too late to give flowers. If you care about someone, whoever that person may be, now's the time to let them know. If there's a wrong that needs to be righted, now's the time to right that wrong. If there's someone you need to forgive, now's the time to do it. If there's something you need to change, now's the time to change it. Because we're not guaranteed too many more morning afters. So the ones we do get, let's take advantage of them. And let's learn to care about each other. And let's learn to love each other. Let's learn to remember that at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you are or what you were born as. We're all Americans. Because I can promise you on that day, those bombs didn't discriminate between one race or another. Those bullets didn't discriminate between genders. It didn't matter that day whether you were gay or lesbian or straight. It didn't matter whether you were Christian or a Muslim or a Jew. It didn't matter if you made 10 grand a year or $1 million a year. They were only looking for one thing. We need to understand that so that we can prevent such things from ever happening again. That we won't have to shed no more tears. That we won't have to bury no more of our children. That we can really make America a land of the free. Because of those who gave of themselves to protect that liberty. So let's take the day and remember, let's not take each of these days for granted. We're not guaranteed many. As God gives us life and breath and love, let's use these days to love one another. Let's use these days to do good for one another. Let's use these days to help somebody. Let's use these days to encourage somebody. Because you never know. We don't know what the next day may bring. As I close this thought, I'm reminded of the words of the great apostle Paul. If I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but don't have love, I'm only a sounding brass or a clanging cymbal. And if I have the gift of prophecy, and I have a faith that can move mountains, and I have all knowledge but don't have love, I'm nothing. And even though I give everything that I possess to the poor, and even surrender my body to the flames, but don't have love, it profits me nothing. Love is patient, kind. It's not boastful or bragging. It does not seek its own desires. It is not proud. It doesn't rejoice with evil, but rejoices with the truth. It bears up under any circumstance, sees the good in every person, believes the best for every person, and always stays in an atmosphere of hope. When all else fails, love never fails. Big Mel here, who is Rugrat. God bless you. And may God bless the United States of America.